Hello and welcome to the next JavaScript video. So we're going to be doing LeetCode number 2621, sleep. And it's going to be dealing with promises and also going to be dealing with setTimeout. And so I just want to briefly talk about how the asynchronous functions work in JavaScript. So essentially when you have an asynchronous function, it usually waits some amount of time to run. And so what happens is if you have an asynchronous function like this, like let's say you have some async function and then you have code, the asynchronous function will actually go into like the background and it will let you know when it's ready to go, and it'll be put into a queue. So it'll be put in over here, like once it's actually ready. Like let's say the asynchronous function says like, wait 500 seconds or something. It will actually wait and then be put into a queue, and then all of our actual normal code has to finish running before the async functions can run. So once all our normal code is done, then the async functions that are in a queue, like async 1, async 2, whatever, as soon as the call stack is empty, then the async functions can start going in. So that's how that works. And now the way promises work is they pretty much take a resolve and a reject function. I don't think you need to give a resolve and a reject. And then you have some kind of function that does something. So like, if something, you can resolve, and then like you can have that be whatever you want. If something else, you can reject. And then typically also what you want to have that's good practice with promises, you want to have them in try catch block. And essentially what that means is you try some code, and if you run into some error, then it will go into the catch. So then you'll have a catch, an error here, and then you can say like error, and then typically when you catch an error, you typically call reject with the error. Or I think you could also call reject in your normal code, but typically that's not like the best practice. But yeah, essentially you want to write promises in try catch because promises can fail. Promises are things like if you do like a fetch request on we actually made a chat room recently, and so when you make a chat room, you have to get data and you have to keep posting your data into your chat room. But sometimes when you try to fetch your data, it won't fetch, and so you have to make sure that like you're actually getting things that are valid. And the same thing when you're posting your data. Like let's say you type some data into a chat room and you hit submit, you want that data to go to the server, but it might not always go there, and so you need to make these requests like a get and post requests, and you need to actually check, did they actually resolve or are there errors? Okay, and then there's one final thing that we need to go over, so I'll make sure I reset this. And that's the setTimeout function. And so in the setTimeout function, it takes a function and it takes a wait time, and it's an asynchronous function, and it'll essentially wait whatever this is in milliseconds, and then it will call the function. So it's definitely quite useful, and it's used a lot in JavaScript. But yeah, so if you have something like, just to give you an example, how we talked about asynchronous, let's say your function just prints hello world, right? So just like, I'll just say like prints hello world. What do you think would happen if you said like print hi? Then remember, this is a wait time of 0. So what do you think would happen here? Print by, and like whatever, something like that, and print some more stuff. So remember what I said, when this is an asynchronous function, what will actually happen is the hi will get printed, then this asynchronous function will go into the background and it'll let you know when it's ready. It'll be put into the event queue, and even though the wait time is 0, all this code actually will execute before the setTimeout. So it'll print hi, by, more, and then it'll finally print hello world, because setTimeout is asynchronous and everything else is just normal code. So it has to wait for all the normal code to finish, even though there is only a 0-second wait. Okay, so now I think we have pretty much everything we need to be completing this. And so what we need to do is we need to return a promise that resolves. And the promise can resolve to anything you want. And so the resolve is kind of like the return value of the promise, essentially. And so one way to do this is we can literally just say return new promise, and it can resolve. So it'll take a resolve value. And what you want to do is you want to actually wait to resolve it until the setTimeout happens. So you just call setTimeout, say resolve, and then you put in millis here. And essentially, so what this code would do is it would return a new promise. It takes the resolve value. You can also give it a reject value, but we don't need to in this case because we're just going to say, like, let's just always resolve it. And then it will do a setTimeout, resolve, and then it'll wait this time. Now, yes, you could put this in a try-catch block, right? You could put this in a try-catch block if you wanted to as well. So you could try like this. You could put it in this, and then you could catch some errors here. So let's say error. Then you would reject maybe, right? So reject the error. And then, but now in this case, your promise would actually not take just a resolve. It would take a resolve reject. This is a normal standard format for a promise. So what you want to do is you want to have a setTimeout. And now also, I don't think you want it to just resolve, but I think this will actually work. Yeah, I think you can actually do this. Reject error. Let's see here. Yeah, let's see if, well, we have a problem. We'll find out. Okay, so that actually does work. And so you can also set your resolve to resolve to some value. So if you want it to resolve to some value, what you would actually do is you just say, like, let's take nothing and let's resolve to like 5 or something. And this would work as well, or like, you know, hello world or whatever. And then if you console log, like, if you console log the value here, then it would print hello world. So that works as well. And essentially what this part here does is the then is called after the promise is resolved or rejected. So I think in this case, the then is called when the promise is resolved. And then normally if you use this kind of format where you do sleep.then, then you also have like a catch block afterwards that handles the errors. But yeah, I think the then only gets called when the promise gets resolved. So you can promise chain by having a bunch of thens. So you can have like make a promise, then do something else, then do something else, you know, and then finally have a catch block. But essentially this is a format for a promise. So you have a try block and then you have a catch block. And if you know it's always going to resolve, you don't actually need both. So I think if you do something like this, this will also work. And let's just say we don't even want to give our resolve a value. So we can actually just call the resolve function itself. And so it would be something like this. And let's say we don't even need to give it a reject, which say like we're never going to reject. Just make sure our parentheses are correct here. Like this. Good, now we're missing something. I think we're missing something. Oh, let's see here. Return new promise. I don't think we need this. Let's see. So let me just double check here. setTimeout. Right, I think we need this. Yeah. So we need to actually close up the promise. Okay. So I think that's what it is. Okay, so that also works. And so there is one more way of doing this, and that's with async await. And so what async await essentially does is it waits for a promise to resolve. And so this is another way of writing it. So if you call await and then you give it a promise, then it will wait for that promise to resolve. And so we can do that as well, where we could just say await, and then we can just say new promise. And then we can kind of do the same thing where we can give it a resolve. And then essentially we can do, I think we can literally just do a one-liner here. So we can do, let's give it a resolve, and let's, the function that we're going to call is actually going to be setTimeout. So setTimeout on resolve. And we're going to give it millis here. Okay, let's see what happens here. Okay, so that works as well. And essentially what this does is the waits, it pauses execution until this promise resolves. So if you have a wait and then you have code under it, it's not going to run until the promise resolves. And then this will actually return undefined, but that's okay because the then actually just checks for a resolution to the promise, not the return value. So this will still work because the promise will resolve to, you know, like there's not going to be any errors here. So assuming their promise resolves to success, then it will still do this then thing. And so that's the other way you could do it. And I think I used await for my, like, I think await's just a little bit cleaner when you call fetch commands and, like, you know, get and post and things like that. Await's just a little bit less code instead of promise chaining, but they're pretty much the same thing. And so it's just personal preference. Okay, so I think that's going to be it for this problem. Hopefully I cleared up what promises are and how setTimeout works and a little bit how async works. Definitely a bit confusing. I would encourage you to practice this kind of stuff, and we're going to have a lot more problems on promises and setTimeouts, so I'll definitely repeat what I said in the future problems. That's going to be it for this one. Hopefully you liked it, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.